Before you go any further, pay attention to the feeling that brought you here, not the click itself, not the title, not the timing, but the deeper sensation beneath all of it. There are moments in life when something inside you becomes aware of a change long before your mind can explain it. This is one of those moments. You may have tried to dismiss it, to convince yourself that the strange pull you have been feeling is nothing more than imagination, stress, or anticipation. Yet the feeling remains. It lingers beneath your thoughts, quietly reminding you that something larger is unfolding around you. That is why you are here now. Not by accident, not through coincidence, but because a part of you has already recognized a shift that your conscious mind is only beginning to understand. As the moon moves into Pisces on June 7th, an energetic threshold is crossed. Something subtle yet profound begins to move beneath the surface of reality. The distance between what is visible and what is hidden becomes less defined. The barriers that normally separate intuition from certainty begin to soften. For many people, this moment will pass unnoticed. They will continue moving through their routines, distracted by obligations, noise, and endless demands on their attention. But for those who are sensitive to energetic currents, for those who have spent years feeling things they could never fully explain, the change arrives differently. It arrives as a sensation before it becomes an event. It arrives as a knowing before it becomes a realization. Perhaps you've already felt it. A quiet pressure in your chest, a growing awareness that something is approaching, a sense that a chapter is closing even though no visible evidence has appeared yet. These signals are easy to overlook if you are searching for dramatic proof, yet they are often the earliest indicators that your inner world is preparing for transformation. What makes this moment significant is not simply that the moon enters Pisces. It is the way this transit interacts with the deeper layers of your awareness. Pisces energy has always carried a unique quality. It dissolves the structures that normally keep life predictable. It weakens the rigid borders that separate logic from intuition, certainty from mystery, and the physical world from the unseen dimensions that influence it. During this period, information does not always arrive through analysis. It arrives through feelings, impressions, dreams, symbols, and sudden realizations that seem to emerge from nowhere. For someone on a path of awakening, this can feel both inspiring and unsettling. The mind wants clear answers. The soul often communicates through experience instead. What has been dormant within you begins to stir during this window, not because something new is being added to your life, but because something that has always existed beneath the surface is finally receiving permission to emerge. This timing is not misplaced. It is not happening too soon, and it is not arriving too late. It is unfolding precisely where it is meant to within the larger story of your journey. Yet, hidden within this alignment is an important message, one that many people will ignore until they realize what they have lost. Your attention matters now more than you realize. The energy moving toward you requires space to reach you. If every moment is filled with distractions, if your focus is scattered across countless demands, if your mind is constantly occupied by noise, conflict, and the emotional weight of other people, then the very guidance attempting to reach you becomes difficult to hear. This period is asking for something that modern life rarely encourages. It is asking you to become still, not passive, not withdrawn from life, but intentionally present. There's a difference. Deep within yourself, you have already felt the invitation. It has appeared in fleeting moments when you wanted to step away from the constant stimulation around you. It has surfaced when you crave solitude without fully understanding why. It has whispered to you during quiet evenings when everything inside you seemed to be asking for space. This is not emptiness calling you, it is clarity. It is the sacred silence that remains when illusions begin to fall away. Yet many people spend enormous amounts of energy avoiding this place. They stay busy. They seek constant entertainment. They fill every empty moment with conversation, content, and activity, because stillness often reveals truths that cannot be ignored. But the energy of this Pisces moon is not interested in maintaining old distractions. It gently but persistently redirects your focus inward. It encourages separation from what no longer aligns. It creates unexpected distance where attachment once existed. It closes familiar pathways so that new awareness can emerge. If you fight against this process, confusion may intensify. You may feel disconnected, uncertain, or emotionally unsettled. Yet the discomfort is not punishment. It is a signal that you are searching for answers in places where they can no longer be found. The breakthrough waiting for you cannot be recognized through constant external stimulation. It requires stillness. It requires presence. It requires the willingness to sit with yourself long enough to hear what has been trying to reach you all along. At the same time, signs are already appearing around you. The universe rarely announces itself through dramatic declarations. More often it communicates through patterns. You may notice repeating numbers appearing with unusual frequency. You may wake from dreams that refuse to fade, carrying emotions and messages that linger throughout the day. You may experience sudden emotional waves that seem disconnected from your immediate circumstances. You may even witness relationships shifting unexpectedly, with certain people drifting away as though an invisible force is reorganizing your path. These moments are easy to dismiss when viewed individually. Together, however, they form a language of alignment, redirection, and preparation. Most individuals will explain these experiences away because doing so feels safer than questioning what they might mean. Awareness requires responsibility. Recognition demands change, yet you have never been someone who could completely ignore what you feel. You notice connections that others overlook. You sense movements beneath the surface before they become visible. That sensitivity is not a weakness. It is the reason this message is reaching you now. It is the reason this particular moment feels different from countless others that came before it. During this window, paying attention is not optional if you wished to remain aligned with what is unfolding. The current moving beneath your life is already in motion. Ignoring it does not stop it. It only makes it harder to recognize where it is trying to lead you. And what comes next may challenge everything the modern world has taught you about where clarity, guidance, and true connection are actually found. What happens next may feel counterintuitive, especially if your first instinct is to seek comfort through connection. You may find yourself wanting to call someone, send a message, surround yourself with familiar faces, or fill every quiet moment with activity simply to avoid being alone with your thoughts. Yet there is an important reason this period is asking something different of you. The guidance arriving now is not attempting to remove people from your life or create unnecessary distance. Its purpose is far more meaningful. It is creating a protected space around what is trying to emerge within you. There are seasons in every spiritual journey when growth requires solitude, not because others are harmful, but because not everyone is capable of understanding the version of you that is currently being born. As the moon settles into Pisces, your energetic sensitivity increases dramatically. The boundaries that normally separate your emotion from the emotions of others become softer. You absorb atmospheres more deeply. You notice subtle shifts in mood and tension and vibration with unusual intensity. Even if you cannot explain it logically, your body will recognize immediately when something feels misaligned. A crowded room may suddenly feel exhausting. Conversations that once seemed harmless may leave you drained. Certain environments may create a heaviness that follows you long after you leave. This is not weakness, it is heightened awareness. During this transit, your energy is functioning like a finely tuned instrument, picking up frequencies that are normally hidden beneath the noise of everyday life. That is why creating distance when necessary is not an act of withdrawal, it is an act of wisdom. It is the conscious protection of something sacred that has not fully revealed itself yet. Think of it as the quiet period before a seed breaks through the soil. The process is invisible but essential. If interrupted too soon, the growth can become distorted. The same principle applies to what is unfolding within you now. This temporary retreat is not about isolation. It is about preparation. It is about ensuring that the insights, opportunities, and transformations attempting to reach you arrive without interference from energies that do not belong to your next chapter. As the Piscean influence grows stronger, another process begins. Emotions that have been stored beneath the surface may start rising unexpectedly. A memory could return without warning. A feeling you thought had disappeared years ago might suddenly make itself known again. You may find yourself revisiting moments from your past with a depth of emotion that surprises you. At first, this can feel unsettling. The mind often interprets the return of old emotions as evidence that healing has failed, but that interpretation is misleading. What is happening now is not a reversal of progress. It is the completion of a process that was never fully finished. Pisces energy works differently than most forces. It does not attack, force, or tear things apart. Instead, it gradually dissolves what has outlived its purpose. It loosens emotional knots. It softens old wounds. It washes away attachments that no longer belong in your spirit. Yet this healing carries a challenge that cannot be avoided. When these emotions surface, will you allow yourself to experience them fully, or will you immediately search for a way to escape? Will you sit with the discomfort long enough to understand what it is trying to teach you, or will you bury it once again beneath distraction, busyness, and avoidance? This question matters more than it appears, because the answer determines whether this cycle becomes a doorway or merely another delay. The opportunity presenting itself now is subtle. It does not arrive with dramatic announcements or undeniable proof. Most people will miss it entirely because they are waiting for something louder. Yet spiritual turning points rarely appear that way. More often they arrive quietly. They reveal themselves through intuition, synchronicity, and gentle inner nudges that ask for your attention. There is an opening occurring beneath the surface of your life. A new chapter has been forming for far longer than you realize. The pieces have been moving into place behind the scenes, often during moments when you believed nothing was happening at all. Now the doorway stands before you, but stepping through it requires something many people struggle to offer: presence, awareness, willingness. You cannot carry endless distractions through this threshold. You cannot hear deeper guidance while constantly seeking validation from the outside world. The invitation is simple, but profound. Turn inward. Listen carefully. Become available to what is trying to reach you. The guidance moving through your life at this moment may seem delicate, yet its message is remarkably precise. Sometimes it arrives as intuition. Sometimes it appears through dreams, emotions, or sudden realizations. Sometimes it speaks through a certainty that emerges without explanation. Whatever form it takes, recognize that it originates from a place deeper than ordinary thought. It is connected to something larger than personal preference or temporary desire. It is part of a greater intelligence guiding you toward the next stage of your evolution, and whether you consciously acknowledge it or not, this movement is already underway. It has entered your awareness. It is influencing your perceptions. It is changing the lens through which you view yourself and your life. The moment the moon begins its passage through Pisces, reality becomes less rigid and more fluid. The familiar structures that once gave you certainty may begin to feel less stable. Your emotions may become more pronounced. Your intuition may speak louder than logic. Your attention may naturally drift away from external concerns and toward inner understanding. Many people mistake this experience for confusion because they expect clarity to arrive immediately. In truth, what is happening is recalibration. The old framework is loosening so that something more aligned can take its place. The challenge is that the ego often resists this process. It wants explanations. It wants guarantees. It wants certainty before trust. Yet the deeper wisdom of this transit asks for the opposite. It asks you to trust before certainty arrives. It asks you to move with the current rather than against it. Those who attempt to force answers during this period often feel increasingly disoriented because they are fighting the very process designed to guide them. You are being invited into a different experience, one rooted in faith, intuition, and inner knowing. Even when the path ahead cannot yet be fully explained, something within you already recognizes it. At the same time, observe carefully what is happening within your relationships. There is an invisible sorting process occurring. Connections that once felt effortless may suddenly require more effort. Conversations that once flowed naturally may feel strangely restricted. Certain individuals may become distant without obvious explanation. Others may seem preoccupied, unavailable, or energetically disconnected. You may even notice a growing desire to step back from relationships that once occupied a significant place in your life. The mind often interprets these shifts as rejection or loss, but what is taking place is far more meaningful than that. This is not abandonment. This is not punishment. This is the natural movement of alignment. The path ahead is beginning to separate what belongs to your future from what was only meant to accompany you through a previous chapter. And as this process continues, the deeper purpose behind these changes will become impossible to ignore. What is leaving your life right now may appear subtle at first, almost invisible if you are only looking for dramatic changes. Yet beneath the surface, an important process has already begun. As the moon moves through Pisces, energetic bonds that no longer support your growth begin to loosen. This does not happen through force or conflict. It happens quietly, almost like a tide, slowly carrying something back into the ocean. The challenge is that your heart may not immediately agree with what your soul already understands. There may still be emotional investments, memories, hopes, or attachments connected to certain people, situations, or expectations. A part of you may want to preserve what feels familiar. A part of you may believe that if you hold on tightly enough, you can prevent the changes that are unfolding. Yet this is where a deeper truth must be recognized. Anything that is naturally moving away during this period is revealing something important. It is showing you that its role in your journey may already be complete. This realization is not always comfortable. Human nature often associates release with loss. We interpret distance as rejection. We assume that endings must automatically mean something has gone wrong. But the wisdom of this Pisces transit invites a different perspective. Sometimes what leaves does so because your future cannot be reached while carrying the weight of your past. Sometimes what dissolves is creating space for something more aligned to enter. The more you resist that movement, the more exhausting the experience becomes. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because you are attempting to stop a current that is already flowing in a different direction. The truth is that holding on will not preserve what is meant to leave. It will only slow your ability to recognize what is waiting ahead. At the same time, another transformation is taking place within you, one that may be even more significant than the changes occurring around you. There has always been a quiet source of guidance living beneath the noise of your daily life. It has spoken to you in unexpected moments, through subtle impressions, sudden certainty, and feelings that seem to arrive without explanation. Yet, there have been many times when you questioned it. Many times when logic convinced you to ignore what your instincts were trying to communicate. During this Pisces moon, that inner guidance becomes far more difficult to overlook. It rises to the surface with unusual strength. What once appeared as a faint whisper now feels like a persistent presence demanding your attention. You may begin noticing things before they unfold. You may walk into a room and immediately sense tension, excitement, or heaviness without anyone speaking a single word. You may encounter situations where the truth becomes obvious long before external evidence confirms it. Experiences like these can feel surprising, especially if you have spent years prioritizing logic over intuition. Yet, what is awakening now is not fantasy. It is an expansion of your natural perceptive abilities. It is your intuitive awareness becoming more active than it has been in a very long time. But every gift carries responsibility. Increased awareness changes the relationship you have with yourself. Once you recognize a truth, it becomes difficult to pretend you never saw it. Once you feel guidance clearly, ignoring it comes with consequences. This is why your sensitivity is increasing during this phase. It is not merely about receiving information, it is about preparing you to navigate your path with greater precision. Decisions are no longer meant to be based exclusively on fear, analysis, or external approval. They are meant to emerge from a deeper alignment between what you know intellectually and what you know energetically. The universe is teaching you how to trust that deeper knowing, yet this heightened sensitivity also creates a new challenge. During this period, outside influences carry far more weight than usual. Every interaction leaves an impression, every conversation introduces energy, every opinion you absorb has the potential to influence your emotional and mental state. Under normal circumstances, this effect may be manageable. During a Pisces transit, however, the boundaries that typically filter these influences become less rigid. You absorb more, you feel more, you carry more. This means that not every voice deserves access to your attention right now. Advice that once seemed useful may suddenly create confusion. Perspectives that once felt neutral may begin generating uncertainty. Information that once inspired confidence may now leave you questioning yourself. This is not because you're becoming weaker. It is because your internal guidance is becoming stronger, and anything that conflicts with it becomes easier to feel. That is why there is wisdom in creating distance from unnecessary noise, not as an act of avoidance, but as an act of protection. Silence has a purpose during this period. It removes competing influences. It clears space for deeper awareness. It allows your authentic inner voice to emerge without being drowned out by the expectations, fears, and projections of other people. When that clarity arrives, it carries a different quality than ordinary thought. It feels grounded. It feels calm. It does not need constant validation. It simply knows. Yet Pisces energy carries another lesson that cannot be overlooked. Alongside heightened intuition comes the challenge of discernment. Because Pisces softens boundaries, it can sometimes blur the distinction between genuine guidance and emotional projection. This is where many people become confused. Old fears can disguise themselves as warnings, anxiety can masquerade as intuition, emotional wounds can create stories that appear convincing but are disconnected from reality. This does not mean the process is flawed, it means the process is refining you. The confusion itself serves a purpose. It teaches you how to recognize the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of truth. Fear tends to create urgency, tension, and endless questioning. Truth carries a quieter energy. It remains steady even when emotions fluctuate. Learning to distinguish between these forces is one of the most important skills this transit can offer. Every time you choose truth over fear, your perception becomes clearer. Every time you trust authentic guidance instead of emotional distortion, your confidence deepens. Gradually, illusion loses its influence because you stop feeding it with uncertainty. Even amidst emotional waves, uncertainty, and moments of doubt, there remains a consistent force moving beneath everything. It is subtle, but it never disappears. You may experience it as a feeling that keeps returning, a direction you cannot stop thinking about, a possibility that continues appearing in your awareness no matter how often you attempt to dismiss it. This is not random. It is the signal of alignment. It is the deeper path within your life beginning to reveal itself. You may suddenly feel inspired to make changes. You may feel called to leave behind situations that no longer inspire growth. You may feel drawn toward opportunities, environments, or experiences that resonate on a level you cannot fully explain. These impulses deserve your attention. They are not meaningless reactions. They are indicators that your internal compass is recalibrating. Every time you honor those nudges, even through small actions, the next step becomes easier to see. Every time you ignore them, a sense of restlessness often follows, not because you're failing, but because a deeper part of you recognizes that movement is being postponed. This is why this period matters so much. The choices you make now influence how smoothly this transition unfolds. And before moving further, there is one truth that must be fully understood. This cycle will affect you whether you participate consciously or not. Turning away from it, burying yourself in distractions, or pretending nothing is changing will not prevent the transformation already underway. It will only determine how clearly you experience what comes next. There is something important you need to recognize before moving forward, because the consequences of overlooking this moment are far greater than they appear on the surface. What is attempting to enter your life right now cannot fully arrive without your participation. The opportunities, insights, and blessings beginning to organize themselves around your path require more than passive observation. They require your attention. They require your willingness to remain present with what is unfolding. If you choose to look away, if you retreat into familiar habits simply because they feel safe, or if you allow old distractions to pull you back into patterns you've already outgrown, the process itself does not disappear. It simply slows. The door remains, but your ability to walk through it becomes delayed. This is not a warning rooted in fear. It is an invitation into awareness. Life occasionally presents moments that act as turning points, and this is one of them. You are standing before a threshold that carries real significance. The direction you choose now influences what becomes available to you next. And perhaps the most surprising part of this transition is how personal it feels. There comes a stage in every genuine transformation where you begin noticing changes within yourself before anyone else can see them. At first, these changes are subtle. They arrive as small observations. You realize certain routines no longer bring the comfort they once did. You notice that familiar thought patterns feel outdated. Reactions that once happened automatically begin losing their grip. The way you engage with life starts shifting, often without conscious effort. This experience can feel strange because it challenges the identity you have grown accustomed to carrying. Yet what is happening is not a crisis of identity, it is the evolution of identity. The version of yourself that developed primarily to protect, survive, and adapt to past circumstances is beginning to dissolve. In its place, a more aligned expression of who you truly are is preparing to emerge. This stage is rarely comfortable. In fact, discomfort is often one of its defining characteristics. Many people encounter this unfamiliar territory and immediately assume something has gone wrong. They interpret uncertainty as evidence of failure. They mistake transformation for instability. Because of that misunderstanding, they retreat toward the familiar, even when the familiar no longer serves them. But what if the discomfort itself is evidence that something is finally moving in the right direction? What if the unfamiliar feeling is not a warning sign but confirmation that growth is taking place? You are not becoming lost. You're becoming less attached to versions of yourself that were never meant to define your future permanently. The process may feel like losing certainty, but in reality, it is the gradual release of limitations that no longer fit who you are becoming. Right now, you may feel suspended between two worlds. One part of you remains connected to the life you have known, while another part is reaching toward possibilities that have not fully taken shape yet. This creates an emotional tension that can be difficult to describe. You may no longer feel completely connected to your old reality, yet the new reality has not fully revealed itself either. It is as though you are standing on a bridge between chapters, unable to return to the beginning, but unable to see the entire destination ahead. This experience is far more common during periods of spiritual growth than most people realize, and under the influence of the Pisces Moon, this sensation becomes even stronger. Pisces naturally softens boundaries and dissolves certainty. It removes the sharp outlines that once made everything appear predictable. As a result, you are being asked to remain present inside uncertainty without rushing to escape it. This is one of the deepest lessons of this transit. Not every stage of growth arrives with immediate answers. Some transformations require trust before clarity. Some paths reveal themselves only after you take the first steps forward. The space you currently occupy is not empty. Beneath the surface, countless movements are already taking place. Alignments are forming, insights are developing, circumstances are rearranging themselves in ways you may not yet understand. Your task is not to force certainty where it does not yet exist. Your task is to remain open to what is emerging. At the same time, something else is occurring beneath the surface. Certain energetic connections to your past are reaching completion. During this phase, you may experience sudden moments of understanding regarding people, experiences, and emotional patterns that have accompanied you for years. Things that once seemed complicated may suddenly become obvious. Situations that felt confusing may reveal their deeper purpose. You may recognize truths that were previously hidden beneath emotional attachment, expectation, or wishful thinking. This process is often described as karmic release. Yet karmic release is frequently misunderstood. It is not punishment. It is not a cosmic debt being collected. Instead, it is the natural clearing of experiences that have fulfilled their role within your life. What has completed its purpose cannot continue occupying the same space indefinitely, and while this release serves your growth, it does not always feel easy. Emotions may intensify, memories may resurface, attachments may resist letting go. There may be moments when the weight of the process feels overwhelming, yet it is important to remember that nothing meaningful is being stolen from you. What is leaving because it cannot accompany you into the next phase of your evolution. The more tightly you cling to it, the more friction you create. The more willingly you release it, the more space becomes available for something new to arrive. Beneath all of this movement lies a source of power that many people overlook. It is not found through constant effort. It is not created through endless action. It emerges through stillness. There is a strength available to you right now that does not depend on doing more. It depends on becoming quiet enough to hear yourself clearly. When you allow external distractions to settle, something remarkable begins to happen. Thoughts lose their urgency. Emotions reveal their deeper messages. Answers arise naturally rather than being forced. The world often teaches that progress requires constant motion. Yet this particular chapter asks something different of you. It asks you to pause long enough to recognize what is already occurring beneath the surface. It asks you to listen instead of immediately reacting. It asks you to observe rather than control. Within that stillness, clarity emerges on its own timetable. And as the energy continues shifting, you may notice another sensation appearing, a growing urgency, a feeling that decisions must be made immediately, a belief that every unanswered question needs resolution right now. This is one of the most deceptive aspects of the process. The urge to rush is often nothing more than the mind attempting to regain control over an experience it cannot fully predict. But not everything requires immediate action. Not every answer is meant to arrive today. The Pisces Moon teaches a different form of wisdom. It teaches that certain truths reveal themselves only when pressure is removed. The harder you force clarity, the further it seems to move away. The more you allow space for unfolding, the more naturally the correct direction appears. Acting from panic creates confusion. Acting from alignment creates flow. This distinction matters now more than ever. Finally, beneath the uncertainty, beneath the emotional waves, beneath every release and revelation, there is a healing process taking place that extends deeper than you may realize. It is not always obvious because healing rarely looks the way people expect. Sometimes old wounds return briefly, not because they are becoming stronger, but because they are preparing to leave completely. Sometimes emotions that have remained hidden for years rise to the surface, asking for acknowledgement rather than suppression. This is one of the most profound qualities of Pisces energy. It reaches beneath conscious awareness into the deeper layers of the psyche, illuminating what has remained unseen. Not to create suffering, but to complete healing. Yet this process asks something important from you. Honesty, the willingness to witness what arises without judgment, the courage to experience emotions without immediately trying to control or eliminate them. Because true healing is not achieved through force. It happens when you allow the process already unfolding within you to reach its natural completion. And as this deeper healing continues, an even more significant realization is beginning to emerge from beneath the surface.